go ahead and get started. Good evening. My name is Lee Tennis, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the superintendent of the Manitowoc Public School District. And I'd like to thank everyone for being in attendance here tonight for this community session. I want to begin by saying how much I appreciate all of the participation that we've had in the community between the conversations we've had with our facility advisory committees that have been together since January, working on all of these plans and recommendations, as well as anyone who's entering into the participation of this of now. And whether you're a parent, a staff member, a community member, a student, your voice matters deeply in the process in which we're doing here. As an old civics teacher, I like this. This feels good to me. Community engagement, I think, is incredibly important when we're planning our future, especially when this future for the Manitowoc Public School District is one that has some troubling statistics on enrollment and things that we have to work out as we move forward. Over the past several months, we've been looking closely at how to best serve our students educationally, developmentally, and sustainably for years to come. The work that has brought us here tonight represents the combined efforts of our staff, community members, and families who've given their time, insight, and care through our facility advisory committee process. We know that the topic of school configuration, closures, and facilities planning touches every corner of our community. It impacts our children's daily experiences, our families' routines, and the identity of our schools. That's why our approach has been to listen first, study carefully, and keep what's in the best interest of students at the heart of every decision. Tonight, you'll see some research that explores some different educational models that the committee has recommended. We'll hear some questions and concerns that we've gathered from parents, as well as any that you have to share. We'll learn about the process as well as the future of the process that we'll use to make these decisions. Our goal is to not simply make changes. It's to make the right changes for the right reasons, to ensure our students are learning in environments that support their growth and well-being, and build a district structure that's strong and sustainable well into the future. I'm incredibly proud of this community, of how it's come together, how we care about kids, and how we honor our traditions while still being able to look forward. We're anchored in what we've always been as ships, and united in ensuring that every child who walks through our doors has the best possibility to learn, grow, and thrive. So thank you again for being here tonight with open minds, for listening, and for sharing your thoughts, ideas, and perspectives as we move forward and chart this course together. So really have three goals for tonight. First is to give you a brief overview of where we are right now and how we got here. Second will be, we've gathered about 28 questions on our Google form that we sent out to our families since last week. So we were able to start a frequently asked questions document, which you have in front of you. A vast majority of these questions and or concerns and comments really have been around the change at the middle level of a 5, 6, 7, 8 building. So we have some information that we will share to further explain what that is and what it looks like, and the reasons why the committee has recommended that particular model for our middle students. And then third, I want to give everyone here an opportunity to ask any questions or provide any feedback to all of us here as we work over the next 3 to 4 weeks, making our specific recommendations as a team based off of the committee's recommendations, as I've been directed to do by the Board of Education at our last meeting last week, Wednesday. So having said that, I just want to point out that if you didn't grab them, there's 2 handouts tonight. The first is a frequently asked questions handout. It's on the facilities planning and grade configuration. This is updated as of yesterday to any questions, comments, concerns that came through our form. We will continue to monitor this day by day, week by week, and make updates. Today, and we sent this out to families, so if you're a parent, you would have gotten this. We sent out a link to a new web page on our website that will be dedicated to this process. It'll be there and it'll house all of the slideshow presentations, question documents, research, the things that we've put together. Because really what we're trying to do is use two-way communication here from all of you to us and then out to make sure that, of course, that our Board of Education, who will make ultimate decisions in this, have all of the information necessary that they need to make good decisions. And that's really the job of our team right now. So what we're doing over the next few weeks is we're really honing in on the specifics. And when we say specifics, we mean dotting I's and crossing T's. Because what I don't want is to not have enough information that is specific enough so that when we just bring recommendations to the board, they're going like, well, what about this? Or what about this? So we're really trying to be intentional of covering all our bases. And frankly, you're helping us with that. By the questions you're asking, by the opinions you're sharing, it's all part of the process. So we very much appreciate that. The second document that you have, this is a summary document, by the way. There's like a much longer one, 7-pager, on some research that's been done. Director Eichmann, who is our secondary curriculum director and student services director, has been looking specifically at this model. In August, when the committee was starting to hone in on some of its recommendations, we knew that this one was becoming a popular one amongst both the staff group and the community group. So we went ahead and started to do our homework on it because first things first, we're not gonna do anything that's not good for kids, period. So we had to make sure as we're vetting these ideas that, you know, research would back it and all of those things. And so this is just a short snippet of a summary, essentially, of the research that Director Eichmann did. There will be one that has much more that we'll add to if people are interested in looking at it, but we wanted to give you the summary version here, at least tonight. So those are the two documents that we're sharing. Again, they'll all live on our webpage, specifically tailored for this. The other night at the school board meeting, a presentation was given last week, Wednesday here, basically highlighting the work of the committees. Today I'm going to do a real abridged version of that because it's kind of old news. It's been out there. And I would assume most of you have sort of heard about the recommendations. So I think the biggest thing is to understand why we're here. And I know the first thing that's going to come out of your mouth is that we have a declining enrollment and aging facilities, which is very true. It's right here on the front. We do have that. But the fact of the matter is, the real reason why we're here is that we have to maintain high quality programming and a high quality and effective staff in our schools working with our kids. And when you have declining enrollment as a district, like 73% of the districts in the state of Wisconsin, you have to make hard decisions. We are currently operating in a system in which I've observed personally for 25 years that is operating essentially the same way with our building footprint as it was when I was a young, much skinnier social studies teacher at Lincoln High School in 2001. We've changed very, very much. And so one of the things that we'll talk about right away is this. When I first got here, there was around 5,500 kids in the district. This year, we're 4,300 and change. It's a change of 1,200 students. You can do the math on the space that would be available in our schools, which is all available on these presentations, by the way, for you to take a look at in real numbers. But our job here is really to right-size our district in order for us to be sustainable and have the high-quality programming that our families are accustomed to. And the only way we're going to do that is by changing the landscape of really the district's footprint. When you look at this is, you can't probably see it from your seats, but the 5,000 was from 2017, 2018. That's not that long ago. The 4,400 was last year. The 3,500 is projected 10 years down the road. So we're going from 44 to 35 in 10 years. Again, that's projected. I would say population projections are okay, but once you get beyond the years of how many kids you have in your school system, it becomes difficult to project, right? So you have birth rates. We know pretty well what our enrollment will look like if we continued forward from our littlest ones on. We can calculate that. So you figure we got a good 9 or 10 years worth of data right in our schools now. So the delta on that, or the change potentially on that, would be of two things. One, people start having more kids. Two, we get people moving into the district, which I am encouraged by some housing things that may be happening in the community, which we've been in contact with the city on. But what we gotta do is we've gotta make sure that we are putting ourselves in a position that we can be sustainable. All right, and that's really the goal of our work. I do want to jet back to one slide here, just so that you're aware of the committee's work, because that is very important. That was a process in which the committees engaged in a lot of information and had very, very good dialogue, and some of the committee members are here, which shows you how committed they are. They've done their work, but they're still here because they're interested and invested. You can see here, from February to April, we really looked at what our major issues are. And then from May to August, we really focused on how do we get our district right-sized? And what does that look like, both in terms of our building footprint and in terms of our grade alignment and structure of our district. Then in September and October, we worked on recommendation development, and we again presented to the Board of Education last week, Wednesday. I want to highlight some enrollment things that, just as we're talking about here, there's some slides on these things if you haven't seen them. They're on our webpage. They go very in depth into the enrollment of each of our school buildings. They also go in depth in terms of how many sections of classes we have in each school building. And they also show our capacity. In other words, how much extra space do we have? Which I think is pretty critical when you're thinking about how you're operating efficiently. That is a powerful slide in my opinion. This is all of our schools. The blue represents classrooms that we could put a classroom of students in. These are our elementaries and 2 middle buildings. And what you'll see here is that there are still non-blue rooms, which means we've also identified rooms that are used for things like art, music, bi-ed, special education. So this capacity is not just all the rooms. This capacity is like literally rooms we have for classrooms. And what you'll see here is, if you look at the bottom, and I mean, I even say you can take out Wilson, Washington, right? But the idea here is that we have quite a bit of open space and capacity in our school buildings. And when you think about costs, a little over 70% of our budget in the district goes to people. That's, a district has resources. It's people, money, and time. And they're all limited. And so when we're looking to solve for X, what we're doing is trying to make sure that we have highly qualified staff, good class sizes, good programming. I mean, these are the boxes we want to continue to check far into the future. But the inconsistencies in state funding and some of the other things has made that a little bit challenging. This year, as a matter of fact, they decided the $325 increase per pupil wasn't going to be paid out in state aid. If we wanted to tax you for it, we could, but they didn't put it on like they normally do in aid. So anytime we get reduced in aid, it means, where does the burden fall? We already know where it does, where it always does, right? So this is a key point with the capacity piece. I want you to know too that this committee didn't just look at, hey, we're declining. Hey, we gotta do something about buildings, and hey, we gotta do some consolidating. They really looked at things like even learning spaces. So this slide represents contemporary learning spaces that have been constructed in schools, mostly in the state of Wisconsin, either through a, sort of like taking an older building and repairing it and refurbishing it, or building new. There's some photos in here that represent each of those. The committee then went through and put dots. Blue dots means they like it, white dots means they didn't like it. So you can see on here there were some spaces they really liked, some they really didn't. This will be helpful for us as we move forward. Because of course, while all of this is happening, we're continuing to spend the capital that we borrowed to fix up our school buildings. We then, I'll summarize it by this. This was the build your own district. As you can see, it looks like a game board, but it's really just classrooms that are tied to schools. And what it also shows on here is that there's some open space. So the challenge for the committee was, hey, make as many options as you can make, trying to make the district more efficient. And so that's where we got the 54 different options with the 14 different structures and grade alignments and all sorts of things. And then the committee used the process to narrow things down. Where was the sweet spot? Where were their recommendations going? And you can see them here engaging in that work. The blue on this, I think, is also good. This represents where our folks' consensus was. There's two things I want to highlight. One, there was a bunch of consensus, meaning like nearly unanimously, around the grade configuration piece you can see at the top. The committee strongly recommended moving to K-4 elementaries, having 4 of them, because the other thing that associates with that is down here. This is the population size of elementary schools. And one of the things that the committees were keen on is keeping the sizes of those pretty darn similar to what we have right now, by having the fourth, through 4th grade. So essentially, you're dealing with elementary schools that won't be overcrowded. They won't have more kids in them than they do right now. And then this was that recommendation shown in a little bit bigger way. And again, what the board heard in the presentation in terms of recommendations was a summary of our existing conditions, which is the Manitowoc Public School District has experienced declining enrollment, and it's projected to continue experiencing it. This has led to operational and educational inefficiencies and an excess of building space across the district. The district's buildings are aging and facing failing infrastructure and outdated learning environments. Then the committee made some recommendation statements. These statements are very general in nature, but they certainly communicate the intent of the committee's work. Number 1, to consider comprehensive strategies to stabilize and grow student enrollment. It's what we started talking about when we came in. There are things that we don't have any control of in regards to student enrollment. One fact of the matter is we live in a very aged county. In relative terms to the state, it's pretty old. Can't do anything about that. However, there are things and levers we can pull as a district to help attempt to get more student enrollment. By choice is where you have to go for that. And I've said it a number of times, the way we get more kids in the district is to be better than everyone else. And that's really what we need to do over the next several years. And I firmly believe that the strategic vision that the board passed in May will bring us there. Also talking about consider adjustments to district structure to create equitable educational experiences for every student. Consider the operational and educational benefits of shifting grade configurations within the district. Consider school building consolidation to maximize operational and educational efficiencies while optimizing resources for student success and well-being. And then lastly, consider physical capital improvements to all spaces, interior and exterior, district-wide, to align current district curriculum delivery with contemporary learning environment, architectural design, and best practice. Specifically, the recommendation statements regarding elementary schools were to consider closing, idling, repurpose, selling multiple elementary school buildings to maximize operational and educational efficiency with the remaining 4 elementary K through 4 grade school buildings. Consolidation of students and staff is in ideal configurations with the remaining 4 school buildings with balanced student enrollments as much as possible. Consider maintaining a dedicated educational center for the district's earliest learners, that's our 4K students at this point in time. And then for the middle schools, their recommendation statements are to consider creating a rolling cohort model middle school path for all students by creating 1 intermediate school serving 5-6 students and 1 middle school serving 7-8 students with our 2 existing middle buildings. Consider utilization of the 2 existing middle buildings in the short term, and this is key, with recommendation to study optimal long-term architectural solutions. Folks, we talked about this earlier in the year when we were looking to get some capital to do some very necessary maintenance on our school buildings. Our high school is 102. Wilson and Washington are 95 and 90, and they're old and they need work. And so we have to make some decisions here in the next year or so. What do we want the future of those middle buildings to look like? All right, and the good work that the committee did is they left that there for us to handle after we solve this. You know, we're not coming out of this with recommendations to go to referendum and build something. That would be putting the cart a little before the horse. This deserves our attention first. We have to make sure that we structure the district in a way that's responsible moving forward. We already have the capital to work on the critical maintenance of the existing school buildings, which we will be able to do. And oh, by the way, we'll be able to take the capital from the buildings that are decommissioned or designated to be spent in those buildings and put them into the remaining buildings we have to make even better improvements than what we had planned when we began the process of the capital referendum. So that's a positive net outcome of these recommendations. And that's sort of where everything lies right now. I turn your attention to the frequently asked questions document at this point. As you peruse through this, as I mentioned, every comment, question, or concern was addressed in some way, shape, or fashion in this document. As you'll see when you flip through this, there's lots of thoughts, opinions, and questions about the middle model, that middle building model. In anticipation after our August meeting when that blue showed up and we knew that was the direction we were going, as a leadership team of the district, we began to look at, okay, if this is a serious consideration, we've got to make sure that this is a good, viable consideration, not only for our students and their learning, but our district and its sustainability. So they got to work. And you see that work again in the handout around the 5, 6, 7, 8. But what I want to do is, with the help of some tools, my team, specifically Director Eichmann, who did the research and put together these materials, also put together a short informational video. And it's only 6 minutes long, but I think it's important to take this in because this is the result. This is what our research told us about this model. And I want to show it because, I mean, I was a teacher and I can explain things, but this explains it really, really well, probably better than I could do. So I just want you to listen. And then after that point, I just have a couple of closing things on that. And then I want to turn it over to you for your questions, comments, and concerns.
All right, let's get right into it. We all know that school is about more than just what's taught in the classroom, right? It's also about how the school itself is set up. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating question. What if the way we group grade levels could totally change a student's entire educational path? Turns out, the answer isn't just yes, it's a huge factor that we might have been overlooking for a long time.
Now, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, you know this feeling. Sixth grade. It's just a notoriously tough year. The social scene gets super complicated, the schoolwork gets harder, and for so many kids, it feels like they've been dropped into this brand new, really overwhelming world. But why? Why is this one transition so consistently rocky for everyone?
Well, this isn't just a hunch, it's something we can actually measure. Research shows that when students move to a new middle school for sixth grade, their math and English scores drop by an average of 0.15 standard deviations. Now, that number might not sound like a lot, but to put it in perspective, that's enough to take a solid B student and knock them down to a C in just 1 year. And what's worse, that slump can follow them all the way through 8th grade. This is the 6th grade stumble, and we've got the data to prove it.
So here's the most important point of all. This whole debate about how to group grades, it's not really about chasing higher test scores. It's about something way more fundamental. It's about lining up the structure of our schools with the actual developmental stages of our kids. I mean, think about it. You can't design a school for a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old in the exact same way and just hope they both do well. Their brains, their social needs, they are literally in two completely different worlds.
Okay, so let's check out a strategy that really zeroes in on that timing. It stops asking which model is best and starts asking a much smarter question. How can we sequence the school experience to dial down the stress and ramp up the growth during these super critical preteen and early teen years?
The big idea here is something called developmental sequencing. Think of it as a master plan for creating a much smoother journey for students. It's all about intentionally designing school transitions so they feel like bridges, not massive hurdles. It's about carefully matching the environment to what kids actually need as they go from being a kid to being a young teenager.
And this is where that strategy really starts to make sense. You've got the K-8 model, which is all about building relationships. But then you've got the traditional 6 through 8 middle school, which often causes that stumble we talked about. But look at that third option, the 5-6/7-8 split. Its whole mission is different. It's not just about academics. Its core idea is protecting pre-adolescence. It's basically a built-in defense against that 6th grade dip.
So how does this actually work? Well, it means rethinking what middle school even is. Instead of one big 3-year block, this approach splits it into 2 separate 2-year phases, and each one has a very different job to do.
This illustrates those two jobs perfectly. First, you have grades 5 and 6, which act as a developmental buffer. This is a protected space where preteens can learn how to juggle multiple teachers and a more complex schedule, but without all the social pressure from older, more mature students. Then, grades 7 and 8 become the academic launchpad, a place that's all about ramping up the rigor, building independence, and getting these students truly ready for the demands of high school.
So why is this separation so powerful? Well, for one, it deals with what experts call the sophistication gap. I mean, the difference between a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old is just massive. This model shields the younger kids from some of the riskier behaviors and social pressures, basically letting them be kids for a little bit longer. And on the flip side, it frees up the 7th and 8th grade teachers to really accelerate the curriculum and tackle more mature themes without worrying about the younger students. It's a win for everybody.
Now, this isn't just some idea on paper. It's a model that's being used successfully right now, today. Let's take a look at a few school districts in Wisconsin that are making this happen.
And what's amazing is how flexible this model is. West of Pier, for example, uses totally separate buildings. Kimberly area has a similar setup. But maybe the most interesting one is Little Chute. They have their 5-6 school and their 7-8 school in the very same building. This just proves that the real separation isn't about physical walls. It's all about smart, intentional programming.
And this quote just nails it. This is the secret sauce. The magic isn't in the bricks and mortar. It's in the operational philosophy. It's about creating 2 distinct cultures, 2 different sets of expectations, and 2 totally tailored experiences for students, even if they're walking through the same front door every morning. The separation is administrative, and that's what makes all the difference. But look, having a great structure is only half the battle. This model creates 2 major transitions, from elementary into the 5-6 school, and then again into the 7-8 school. And managing those moments well is absolutely crucial. So how do they do it? For that first jump from elementary into the 5-6 intermediate school, the whole focus is on building independence.
The school basically becomes a training ground for those executive function skills. We're talking about explicitly teaching kids how to use a planner, how to keep their backpack organized, how to navigate different teachers with different rules, and, maybe most importantly, teaching them how to speak up and ask for help when they need it.
For the second transition, heading into the 7-8 middle school, the focus shifts to social connection and academic rigor. And the single most important piece of this puzzle is teaming. Just imagine a small group of teachers, say for math, English, and science, who all share the same group of about 100 students. They work together as a team, planning lessons and supporting those kids together. It's called the heart and soul of this model because it takes a big, potentially anonymous school and breaks it down into a small, supportive community where every single kid is known.
So when you boil it all down, the philosophy behind this whole 5, 6, 7, 8 model is really a fundamental shift in what we prioritize. It's about moving away from a single-minded focus on test scores and instead putting developmental readiness front and center. It's a student-first approach that understands that if you create an environment where kids feel safe, supported, and challenged in the right ways, the academic success, that's going to follow.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Take a hard look at the structure of your own local school district. Is it really intentionally designed to match the developmental journey of its students? Or is it just a product of how things have always been done, of logistics, or, just plain administrative convenience? It's a really important question to ask.
Oh, YouTube is going to take us on a journey where I don't know where it's going. Yeah. So essentially, wanted to share that with you. That was sent home today to our parents, along with the documents that you received here tonight, in an effort to essentially help explain some of the question marks that we had. I will say a majority of the questions that we've received about that model are logistical in nature. They're not really questioning much on the learning side of things, which we're thinking through all of that as we plan it, and all of those questions can be answered. Before we get to questions and comments, I just want to share the landscape from what's going to happen from now until the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, when we have special meeting of the board, where they've asked us to be ready to present the details, recommendations. So we're having this meeting tonight, and then over the next 2 or 3 weeks, my team and I are going to be really working hard to dot those I's and cross those T's, so that when we come to present to the board in November, that they have all the information they need to consider. The board isn't taking action at that meeting. They're simply going to hear the recommendations, ask clarifying questions, and then tell us what more information they may need. So if they're looking at our recommendations saying like, we're missing some stuff, we'll get on that right away, because there's time between the 25th of November and the regular board meeting, which is the second Tuesday of December, where, potentially at that point, if they feel like they have the information. We also wanted to ensure that there was a couple of board meetings where public input would be, part of our process. So that, again, the opportunities for public input besides this session, and then we'll do another one of these sessions also, because what will happen is when we make this recommendation to the board, that is going to include schools, right? Which is what everybody really wants to know. And everybody also really wants to know, well, how are you going to decide what you're going to recommend in terms of schools and their closing? So I can speak to what we're going to do as far as a process. So my team and I have a matrix. This matrix is made up of all sorts of variables around our elementary schools. Some of these variables include age of the school, size of the school, condition of the school, how much does it cost to repair it, location of the schools, energy use of the school. So there's lots of ways to measure operationally how much a school costs to run, and those parts will be in there. What I can promise you is that when we come to the board with a recommendation, the recommendation will include an analysis and rationale with it, right? In other words, we'll say, these schools are the schools we picked, and here's why, okay? I already know for a fact, because I was getting my hair cut the other day, and one of the ladies who works in the haircut place says, I know you gotta close some schools, just don't close Jackson. I had another parent, when I went to meet with some PTA folks, and they says, I know you gotta close some schools, but don't close Monroe. I know you gotta, this can be said everywhere, right? School buildings are part of who we are. That'll never change. But the bottom line is that we'll do this together. At the end of the day, based on the recommendations, there will be some people that are not happy. There will be some people who are relieved, and there will be some people that don't care either way how they do this. They just want us to right-size the district. So there's all sorts of camps there. What I can promise you is that these decisions are not taken lightly. Our team is looking at long-term for the district in terms of what's in the best interest of our sustainability. That's how these decisions are going to be made. The other thing you have to remember is the recommendations that we provide are just that. They're recommendations. Although they will be complete with rationale and data and all of those things, the ultimate decision makers are going to be the Board of Education. So understanding our roles and responsibilities as either citizens, administrators, staff of the district, community members is real important, because our job, or my job, is to make sure that the board gets recommendations that the experts in this place, as well as the community members that we've used and the staff members that we use from the committees, have their voices heard with the information that goes with it, right? Because ultimately the tough decision has to be made. However it's made, however it shakes out, we'll make it work, because that's also our job, right? All we can do is put forward the best recommendations that we see fit for the district to move us forward in a sustainable way. So that's what's coming, right? And so, I mean, theoretically, the board could make a decision as early December. Theoretically, they could also want more information and wait on it. Somebody asked me the other day, when do you think the last, because quite honestly, we're planning on moving forward with this change for next school year, if we can make this decision in a fairly timely manner. Last year, the Wausau School District closed 3 elementary schools. Their school board voted on that on the first week of January. So I talked to that superintendent, who told me, quite frankly, that he was the dissenter who didn't want to do it the same year. But he says in hindsight, you need to do it in the same year, because you don't want the cloud that's hanging over your community and your district to hang around that long. You want to get it done. So the beauty of this is that Wausau, as well as some other districts that we've talked to that have been going through this same thing, have been very generous and helpful to us, because we want to do this right. This is about kids and their education. So they have shared all sorts of things with us, from processes to documents, and make sure you do this, make sure you do. So it's been very, very helpful in these conversations that we've had with them. The other thing that I would say is very critical that you'll see from us, no matter which schools are identified and which schools the board decide to move forward with, if that's the decision, no matter what ones there are, we will quickly move to celebrate the legacy that they've had in this town. There's no question that every single one of our elementary school buildings have helped shape the people in this room and pretty much everyone who's lived here. And for the psychological reasons that they are part of our identity, are the same hard things. It's almost, it's loss. And so one of the things that we did to also prep this is, in our last administrative meeting, we walked through what the steps of grief are with our principals, helping them know and understand that there will be students, staff, and parents that need to be supported in an empathetic way when this news does finally reach its destination with the decision. So we will handle all of this in the manner in which we will celebrate, similarly to what we do with humankind who pass on, we celebrate them. We need to do the same thing for these schools, and we need to make the kids feeling good about being the last ones that are able to leave their mark on it well into the future for its life. I still hear names such as Garfield, McKinley, all these things, right? They were part of it. And some of you still know and feel that and went to those schools. So we just have to remember that there will be some parts of our learning community, even though we're all ships, that will feel bad if part of them is going to be, done. So I want you to know and understand that we don't take that lightly. I'm very well aware. I'm also very well aware that part of the grieving process is anger. And sometimes people express their grief that way. I can promise you that everyone who has opinions to share will be given that opportunity. Part of the healing process in itself is to be able to express how you're feeling. And those opportunities will exist within our process. I just want everybody to know that, because no matter what happens as a community, we as ships need to move forward as ships. And even though the landscape of our school system will look slightly different, it doesn't change the type of education that we can provide our kids in helping them be effective communicators, creative problem solvers, and engaged community members, just like it always has. We will continue to do those things for our kids well into the future. So at this point, I would like to open it up to questions, comments, anything anyone has. I would just appreciate, since we all don't know each other, that when you're speaking, if you could just say who you are, and if you have, if you're a community member or a parent or why you're here. And then whatever you've got, questions, comments, anything. And we'll do the best we can. If I don't know something, I'm not gonna make it up. I'm just gonna tell you, we don't know yet, because there's a lot of planning to go too, okay? So who's first? Yeah.
I have several questions, but the first one, and then I'll let someone else ask. I'm Michelle Duco, my little one. I'm a parent, goes to Riverview. When you said the criteria for closing, you didn't mention enrollment. So I'm from this area, but never lived in Manitowoc, so I don't have this historical whatever like everybody else. So I don't know. It was interesting to me though, because I went through this. I was a school board member in Racine, so was through a lot of passionate discussions down there. Honestly, unfortunately, more racial issues with closing of buildings. Fortunately, we don't have that here. So it's interesting to me that you didn't talk about enrollment being one of the factors with closing buildings.
So I'm
Specific
sorry.
building enrollment.
Size. I said size. That size to me means enrollment.
Oh, okay.
But building size is important too. But size to me is, how many kids we have in it.
Oh, sorry if I missed that. So
But-
can I ask which schools have the lowest enrollment?
Sure. We have that right here. Madison School has our lowest enrollment, just over 200. And I'm just gonna double check on this. I think it's Monroe potentially. That has the second lowest enrollment. Let's see, pretty sure. Yeah, it's both, square footage, enrollment 243. So here you go. You can have all of them. Jackson, 339. Riverview, 243. Madison, 206. Franklin, 359. Jefferson, 353, Monroe, 243. Those are our current, well, I shouldn't say current as of last year's enrollment. Those are last year's numbers. So they're probably all slightly less.
Or what about the middle?
And at the middle level, we have 479 at Wilson and 561 at Washington. When I was principal at Wilson, we ran near, high 600, 700 kids. That was 2015, 16-ish. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, they're fairly balanced in some respects.
Yeah, our issue
I
isn't
mean, it's
balance,
not-
it's excess space.
Okay,
I mean, we want them balanced. The committee wants them balanced. That was the recommendation, but, we do have some, dynamics size-wise. Some of the schools are larger than others. If you did them all equal, based on our current enrollment, 343 kids would attend those schools. So you can see somewhere over that, somewhere under it. So, you know, you're hitting that spot that they're used to. And that was actually important to the committee. They didn't want their elementary schools to feel super big, which I appreciate. Did that answer?
Yeah, since no one else is asking, can I ask, because
Of course.
what Racine did, because this is what's hard for me, I mean, I picked the school for my little one, who obviously, like everybody, you love and have the community there, so I don't like this idea of like everybody moving at 5, 6, and 7, 8, so they did a lot of K-8, was that a consideration?
Yeah, space-wise, that's not a thing for us. So, you know, our issues, or our recommendations, I would say, were, and I mean, if you're a committee member and disagree, but I think, speaking on behalf of them, was to largely be able to use the existing structures we have, knowing that the end goal in this was really to reduce our footprint building-wise, which a K-8 would do, but I don't know where you know, you just wouldn't have the space.
Okay,
in
I
our
mean,
two
people like that,
existing-
cause then they have that
Right.
community for,
Yeah.
you know, 9 years, or
Correct,
so.
relationship building, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I have a question. My name's Tom Goss. I'm born and raised in Manitowoc, educated in Manitowoc, along with my 2 sons. My question is, it seems like you covered right now a lot of the financial issues that are plaguing the public school system. How do you engage with the Manitowoc City Council members when it comes to finance? It seems like down the road, there's gonna be some serious discussion about money. And do you engage with the mayor and his team and your team on occasion, and how often, or
sure.
at all?
Yeah, great. I actually just went to the city council and talked to the common council about our strategic vision and our plan, because my team and our team firmly believes that the foundation to a strong, thriving community is the school system. And I think if you look around to other models in the state who've had collaborative relationships intergovernmentally, they've done better. They have a common goals in mind. Ours is growth, theirs is growth. How do we work together in partnering? I meet with Adam Teagan, who's the city planner, once a quarter. We just met because, you know, quite frankly, speaking of another variable, I want to know where there's construction going on. If we're placing or deciding on schools, you know, we have to consider that, because those are potential family homes where kids could, you know, not only an influx potentially, but also, you know, potentially walk to school instead of, you know, have to take the bus, right? So in terms of the finance piece though, the city doesn't have a lot of overlap with us, other than through, we're on the TIF board, the TIF district board, with the TIFs in town and how that works. But most of our conversations about finance comes in with our state legislature. The state legislature really determines a lot around our funding. You know, we independently set our tax levy from the city, and outside of, you know, what we're working together in terms of this is we do own some properties jointly, but we do work together, just not a lot on our budget. Not a lot on our budget, because they don't really have anything to do with it. They'll have their own independent levy on the tax bill to run city operations, so.
One more
Yeah.
question. How do you interact with private industry? Because co-oping, I call it co-oping, is pretty popular, I would say, right now, and growing. Is there some part of your team that interacts occasionally or has a team meeting with private industry?
Yeah, we meet with private companies all the time. I would say evidence of this would be every May when we have our School to Work celebration. We have 177 of our kids working with mentors in private industry in the town, so that they can develop their skills, you know, employability skills, learn a trade, learn whether they want to do it or not do it. And so we pack the Capitol Civic Center. private industry sponsors it. It's a $15,000+ event, and it's covered for next year already because of the great relationships we have with private industry. We've had partnerships along the way with home builders, with trying to start curriculum-based pipelines for construction trades, for example. We have conversations with private industry about supporting students' mental health. So we do, and if you take a look at our strategic vision, we have one particular part of that. It's a big rock on communication and engagement, and part of that is to do just what you're saying. Collaborate and engage intergovernmental, higher educational institutions, businesses, so that we can develop really a team approach to how do we make our town better.
Who's the coordinator? Are you the coordinator meeting with these people?
Typically, I do most meetings with them, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Unless it's a particular area, like if it was a YA thing, our secondary person might do it, or if it was a daycare thing, our elementary person might do it, but typically I would.
So you're the guy, okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've got a question. My name is Angela Myers. I'm a parent. Excuse me. My son is getting ready to go to the high school next year, but I'm curious about, I have just a couple of different questions. One is that the declining enrollment was one of your reasons for wanting to do some of that consolidation. Now with the different buildings, like the construction that's going on, what would happen if there was the enrollment started climbing and these buildings now are consolidated? What do you have,
Sure.
like a plan for that?
Yeah, so one of the things that was super important to the committee, I'll hit it here eventually. Okay. One of the reasons they landed in this zone for the size of these elementary schools is because it left room for capacity. So we're by no means pushing this to any types of limits at all. There were some scenarios that were built by the committees that closed more schools than two. But they didn't want to get creeping up in that 500, 450, 500 in each school. One of the reasons was, well, first it was the size. They wanted to keep them smaller. But the second was, what happens if we do grow? I would argue, I've been convinced more than once in the last 25 years that Manitowoc was gonna grow. I do see some signs of it. I think that, our downtown development, we have some good things going on. We have some residential construction, even within the city limits for, besides the subdivision, kind of like in the main area. So, I'm encouraged and potentially hopeful, because I would still say that part of our strategic vision is to get our kids to stay here and begin, having babies, so that our declining enrollment slows the right way, which is you're a thriving community, right? So we're leaving room. We're leaving room. We'll have room in our secondary schools at this point, and we certainly have room in our elementary schools for growth.
So then my second question is where does the alternative school fit into all of this?
So the alternative school, we've already had conversations if we needed to move them or have them in a different location. We have several different options. Once again, we're space rich. So remember, one of the recommendations is idle, repurpose, sell. So we have repurposing options in the district. We also have space options at UW Green Bay, where we actually house one program of ours right now. And we would make decisions there based on, what made the best financial sense to give them a good spot for learning. Because what we don't want to do is to be like, oh, you kids just go over here because we have this room over here in this dungy, no. We will make sure that they have quality learning environments. And we have either plenty of space within the district or options for them in our community. And we'll do what's most fiscally sound, but no matter what, they'll have a good learning environment and a home for all of them. That's a good question. Yeah.
My name is Beth and I'm a parent. I noticed a lot of the focus was on the 5, 6, 7, 8, like academic wise. For K through 4, I was just kind of poking around the state reports last year. And I noticed that some of our schools are meeting expectations, but most of them are either just below or not quite there. How do you anticipate consolidating will impact our state scores?
So we believe all of our state scores are going to increase over the next 2 to 3 years for several reasons. One is we're starting to measure it. Next month at the curriculum committee, what you'll see is a presentation in regards to our own report card. One of the problems with a school report card is that it changes its target every single year. The scores don't really mean much. They don't give you much to compare to. So what we're gonna do is develop our own, one that we can update quarterly, because we do our own internal assessments. Students take the FAC bridge in elementary and the STAR in secondary. And what we're trying to do is figure out those benchmark assessments and how predictable they are when they're measuring our proficiency juxtaposed to the state test, which in Wilson, they have had pretty solid closeness in that. We believe very strongly in our new curriculum that we have for reading. We believe very strongly in that we do some Ames testing also, which is required for the early reading program, Act 20. And we've set aside collaborative time so our staff can do what we call professional learning communities, which is this process in which they collaborate around their students, what it is they're trying to teach them, how they're gonna measure their success, and what are they gonna do if they don't learn it? And what are they gonna do if they already know it, right? So these are the 4 key questions that all of our staff are working around, and we're gonna be more outcome-based than input-based over the next several years. So I would anticipate growth. We actually have also scores from our first FAC bridge assessment that I don't know how to explain it, I haven't dove into it, but we have seen even some growth in this year, which we're gonna share at the curriculum committee meeting next month. But in terms of how will reshaping things affect scores, I don't think much. I firmly believe that we have great staff across the district, and we just haven't always been as results oriented, I think, in this district as we probably should be. So I think we're moving in the right direction there, and I certainly expect, and quite frankly, that video for me, when they talked about taking care of kids, the whole kid, making sure that they have a learning environment that's developmentally appropriate, the curriculum is right, all those things are really important, and they all work in concert. But from my experience as an educator, by far most important thing is student efficacy, their belief in themselves to achieve. And what we're also doing at the elementary level is we've brought in a new social emotional learning curriculum that you may see something coming home about. They're talking kindness, they're talking respect, they're talking about believing in themselves. Those things matter, right? You're not teaching to a test there, you're teaching these kids how to believe in themselves. And that is also important when we're talking about student achievement. And that's another reason why I would predict in the next 2 to 3 years, we're gonna see some jumps in our proficiency rates.
I have a question about kind of reorganizing, like rezoning for specific elementary schools.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of all these like
Yeah.
scenarios, just individual situations, but for example, if you are, let's say, a 3rd grader this year, so you'll be a 4th grader next year, you go to a school that remains open, and your address is rezoned for a different elementary school, would the expectation be that 4th grader who went to K1, 2, 3 at school A now needs to finish 4th at school B and then transition again, and then transition again, and then transition again?
Right. That's a great question. What I would say is that our team is going to have to consider all of those things. I don't know how other districts who've gone through this would do that. What I do know is that we're gonna be working probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks on, because when we come to the board, this is the example of when I say dot I's and cross T's, that has to be part of the recommendation. Because you know why? They're gonna ask me.
I would recommend considering each grade almost, because each grade is going to have a different experience with this transition. So it's kind of looking through that lens of how can we help, because there have been a lot of changes in the district, whether it's out of our control with COVID or the kindergarten transition, there's just been a lot.
Yeah, there sure has.
So to just and then we're adding another transition.
Right.
It's a lot on our elementary school kids.
Yeah.
You know, how you said this is kind of a grief process.
Yeah.
It's sad as a parent that I don't even want to disclose this information to my elementary schooler yet, because we don't really have all the answers.
Right.
And I just think it just brings more uncertainty.
What I will say is that our district has always had and always will likely have process for intra-district school choice. Okay, we have a process in place for that. I think it's even on our website. Where as long as there's room in a school and in a grade or a class, that we would have a process for that. We haven't talked at all about getting rid of that. I mean, especially in this situation. I'm certainly empathetic to what you're saying, because I feel the exact same way when my kids were going through their elementary years, if this were to occur. With grade alignment, my two were in 5th and 6th, so it actually was one of those things for me where the next year they would be, instead of one more year split, they were together. So, I mean, roll the dice, it worked out for us on that. But I would have been thinking the same thing that you are thinking, geez, if this happened and my kid was going into 4th grade, that's tough, that they have to, leave this building and go to a different one. Well, the other thing is when we're making these lines, right, we're very cognizant that closing schools is kind of enough of a tough thing, that when possible, and again, depending on how it works out with what schools and whatnot, like, we're not going to try to flip things upside down here. Like, we would want to try to remain as stable as we could with existing lines and the students going to existing schools, because that upsets things less for those families. And just because we're upsetting some things here and there doesn't mean we want to, dump it all out and shake it all up, right?
I
So,
think when you are going to be approaching that process, there's gonna be more changes than we want, because
I would agree.
if you keep the lines and you have just try to adjust a little bit here and there, then those schools are going to have more kids.
Correct, and there is a goal and a recommendation around this to keep things closer to the numbers than we currently have. So yeah, I agree, but where possible, that is, it's the first time I had to redistrict anything, other than when I taught political science at Lincoln and we did gerrymandering activities with the kids. Outside of that, I don't have any experience doing this, but what we do have is a great process. I will tell you that Jessica Dupre, our tech director, has developed a tool, and those of you who watched the board presentation, Mike Hacker, who does a fantastic job as our owner's rep, who facilitated this process with our committees, said he's never seen anything like it, and he's been working in schools for 15, 20 years. And this tool allows us to, essentially, our entire district is zoned in little tiny chunks of land. They're letters, actually. So it goes like A, B, C, and then it goes like double A, double B. So the arrow, it's really down, right? You can go here, you remember all that. Oh, yeah. So you can go into her tool and you click the zones. What pops up when you click the zones are how many kids live in that zone. It pops up how many are in each grade. It pops up how many are students that have IEPs. It pops up male, female. So we're able to put this puzzle together using this tool. But it's just like never done it before, right? So, we're gonna look at this and we're gonna punch these in and we're gonna see where it is and we're gonna work it out the best we can. Lines can always be changed. I would argue that when we do get our lines completed, I won't say right for people, when we get them completed, What we will also be doing is creating a system to address it every 2 or 3 years so that you're not getting the imbalance that we ended up with. You're going to stay up on it. So any adjustments in doing it that way would be more minor in comparison to what it is we have to do, because these lines really haven't been touched. People say grade alignment. Yeah, they did. They flopped a school from here to here, but the lines didn't change much at all. These lines have been in place since 2006. So we got some work to do. But the goal will be to upset as little as possible with the work that we do.
And one more.
Yeah.
It's related to staffing.
Mm-hmm.
So are all, if you close 2 elementary schools, so that's entire school's worth of staff. So obviously some staff are going to still be needed. My question is, are all district staff and faculty going to have an opportunity to keep their job regardless if their school stayed open or closed?
So that's a great question. When you are looking at making structural changes in your district for the purpose of consolidating and saving and operational savings and all of that, some of that is people, okay? It just is. You know, you go from this many schools to this many schools. However, you've got to remember how we staff for schools by people, right? These schools that are closing still have students, and they still need adults to work with those students, all right? One thing we experienced this year, and I'll answer it this way, is to say we can never make any guarantees. This year, this district reduced 20 professional staff in our last season of staffing. Why? Because we had less kids. We anticipate needing to do that anyway because why? Have less kids. So the answer is we can never guarantee anything, but I think last year, correct me if I'm wrong, we had 1 layoff out of 20 because attrition is a real thing. We had 18 retirements. We had a number of staff that chose to move or leave to another district. We average up over 20 some of those per year. We have told our staff, and what we'll continue to tell them is, listen, if you want to work in Manitowoc, we want you here, and we'll do everything we can to make that happen through attrition. Making guarantees isn't something I can do, but that is the intent. And that was our intent this year that we told them, and that's what we did, and we delivered, and I think we can deliver in that manner again. But we staff based on number of kids, so ratios are what we're looking at. That's a good question. Others?
Hi, my name's Alex, I'm one of my parents. I have a question about the middle school, dividing that, 6th grade, 7th grade, or 5th grade, 6th grade. That's gonna be logistically a nightmare between having a 7th grader and a 6th grader next year. How is that gonna be addressed?
Yeah, great question. So we know we have to do staggered start times. That's a must. Okay? So that alleviates the issue of needing to be in the same place at the same time with both kids, right? Now, issue number 2 is that we offer busing, and we will have a solution for transportation for students. If you're a student who lives on one side of town, needs to make it to the other side of town, we currently have a 2-mile radius sort of policy. We're also gonna take a look at that, especially this year. But the goal is that we would be there, especially for those students on the other side of town that would have busing to the school they need to get to.
As a parent that lives outside of the district.
Yep.
When we moved out of the district, we chose to keep our kids in this district.
Yeah.
Are you worried about the amount of kids you're gonna lose by making this change? That might go to private schools or go to a different district?
I would say I'm always worried about losing students. But what I would say I'd be more worried about losing students for losing the programming that we would have to cut if we didn't make changes like this.
Is there a way we can continue to have Wilson and just add 5th grade to it, and Washington and just add 5th grade to it, or they don't all fit in one school?
That wasn't that's probably not feasible in numbers wise. So remember I told you when I took over at Wilson, we had about 600 and some odd, 700 kids. That's roughly what it'll be, I believe, for next year with the 2 full grades. If we added another full grade, you would be talking about schools that are approaching 1,000 students, which in that capacity with that wide range of, now what if the schools were designed that way, so in some cases, as I think you maybe caught in the video, Little Chute in their 5, 6, 7, 8 operates out of one school, but the school really operates like 2 wings. Over here is this, the 5th and 6th, because what they're seeing there and what they're talking about is it's developmentally more appropriate and better for kids to learn when they're in that narrow band of age versus a larger thing. So that really wasn't an option. Good questions, thank you. Other questions, comments? I'm doing my teacher wait time. I'm a little out of practice with it, but I'm always here. My number to my direct line is 920-686-4781, 686-4781, or an email away, or you hit submit on a question or a comment on the form. I'll get it. It's gonna get addressed all the way through here. We'll continue, if you're a parent, we'll continue to communicate with you via email and updates on our webpage, which I said launches today. If you're a community member, I'll stay in touch with you through press releases, talking to the folks who call me from the radio and other folks like our friend here from FRV, but, or call me, because the dialogue has to continue. There's gonna be more. This is just the first step. We're really using a strategy called microdosing. You take a little bit of information and you educate them about it. You comprehend it, you ask your questions, you process it, and then you move to the next phase. So we're in this middle ground of, okay, the structures and the main ideas of this are out there. This is healthy because what you ask and what you taught, there was a question or two tonight that I don't think we've discussed yet. We haven't thought of everything. We're not, never did this before. And that's why we do it, because we're gonna help each other figure it out. I just ask that you please stay engaged in the process, ask questions when you have them, be supportive of folks when the news comes out and they're hurting or they just need somebody, because we will. Whether they want it or not, we'll be caring and supportive at that moment. But tonight, it's really not about buildings, about people, about our kids. It comes to buildings because they learn in them. But the fact of the matter is when I reflect on my educational career, whether that be at Big Beatty Knock School, K-12 school, I want to talking about grade configurations. Mine were all in one building, right? But there were only 475 of us, so it's a little different size. I remember those classrooms, they were great. But then when I went on, I learned in other classrooms, and those were great. What made them great wasn't the classrooms, or the buildings they were in, or the gyms we had or didn't have. It was the teachers that I had who inspired me to be better, do better, and become the person that I am today. And so that's what we have to rely on, is the idea that we have great people working in this district who are highly dedicated and committed to our kids' future. And no matter what building that happens in, that's gonna be a priority in this district. And what I would tell you is, having one just graduated and in college and one a senior this year, I couldn't be happier with the education that my kids and opportunities my kids have received. And I'm deeply grateful for that. And I know you are too. We're gonna take care of kids. That's what we're gonna do. Even though this is hard, we'll always take care of kids. And it's people, not buildings, that matter.
What is the website, the new one?
We actually, could we throw that up here? I think it might be. I think we might have wanted to do this and I forgot. So, on our main website, you'll see a link to a section called Our Schools, Our Future. What you'll see on this is a place you can submit a question. It'll give a little preamble here. There's gonna be a spot to put things that are in the news. We're gonna talk about the process so people understand it. We'll share our reference documents, recommendation statements, timeline of the work, frequently asked questions by topic so that you can go to the topics you're most interested in. And then how to get a hold of people. And that's up and running as of now. Does anybody have anything else?
Sorry, I did think of something. What's the plan for the buildings, that will be vacated?
So right now, the recommendation is repurpose, sell, idle. So we will work through that, and that will be part of the recommendation that our team provides the board on November 25th.
So you just said like 3 things, so it's not
Correct.
a.
We don't know yet.
Okay.
We have to make that recommendation. That's part of what we're doing right now in terms of determining, what schools and why and all that sort of thing. So when that comes out, we will also we won't just say, yeah, we think you should close X. We'll say, we think you should close X and Y for these reasons. And we also think what we should do with those buildings is this.
Is it absolutely 2 schools, or is there a possibility that there's 1 school?
It'll be 2.
It'll be 2.
I mean, well, it's up to the board. I'm speaking completely,
Recommendationally.
when I talk about what we're doing here, just so you know, I'm just basing it off the recommendations, right?
Right.
So right now, the direction that has been given from the board is for us to take those recommendations and put meat to them, right? And then bring them back. So that's what they're gonna get. We're not wavering from these. We, as a team, I didn't have to twist anybody's arms up here to align themselves in a favorable manner with this plan. Because it's educationally sound, it makes us a little bit more efficient. And so we're coming back to the board with those specific recommendations. Then it's up to them. They can amend any of them. They are the ultimate decision makers in all of this. All our job is to bring them the information and provide them with sound rationale and recommendations. Yeah.
Eric Haven, graduate from Lincoln, big youth apprenticeship supporter. I have 2 students from Lincoln that work with me. Our trade STEM area is very, very critical to all of our area employers. It's great to see that in the master plan that's an area of emphasis. In thinking about the tech ed area, is there going to be some synergies there, some gains where you could see whether it's foreign language, tech ed, where how many teachers are going back and forth across town, focusing in 2 different areas where they can really focus on a larger group, but targeted, and it'd be better for them as well as the students.
Yeah, one of the things we're looking at with this curricularly as well is duplication is never cheap. Operating 2 full-blown tech ed labs isn't cheap. Operating 2 full-blown pools isn't cheap. So, one of the things that the committee thought of as we went through all of this is in the future. This is the future stuff. So we're mired right now into how we're right-sizing. I would say by July or August, I'm gonna ask these folks who served on this committee 2 questions. One is, do you wanna continue? And if you do, can you sign up for another year? Because the next phase of this is to immediately engage our stakeholders in our community in a question around our secondary schools. And it's critical for the reason you bring up, because we need to look at how do we do things more efficiently. By having the grade bands where they are, that will allow us to end some duplicating of things, which will be more cost effective. And I would also argue that they'll be able to focus on those things, as you mentioned, with the staff that are best fit to teach our kids at that level. We have a guy at Wilson, Tech Ed-wise, who's just crushing it, and he's got a curriculum base for 7, 8, right? It's right in that area. So, you know, these folks are gonna be utilized. We want our folks' gifts and talents to be in the room with kids, the right ones. And that program would be an example of it.
More question, Lee, would it make sense to bring all the elementary kids together as one group before you would make that announcement? Just to celebrate them, whether it's food or meal, that this is all the junior ships per se?
It's a great idea. Love it. Love it. JFK will house them. We should do that. Thank you. It's a great idea. Anything else? Well, again, thank you for coming tonight, for the dialogue. Everybody's great questions. Keep asking them. That's how you'll help us make better decisions. So really appreciate it, and thanks for coming out tonight.